The package sat on my kitchen counter like a coiled snake. Brown paper, precise folds, my name and address written in that unmistakable calligraphy I'd seen on countless birthday cards and holiday invitations. Margaret always did have perfect penmanship. I circled it twice before reaching for the scissors. My fingers trembled slightly as I cut through the tape, though I couldn't say why. Mother-in-law sends a gift, perfectly normal, right? Except Margaret never sent packages. She delivered everything in person, ensuring maximum impact for her carefully crafted criticisms. "Just open it," I muttered, yanking the paper aside. Inside was my painting. The one I'd submitted to the downtown gallery last month. The one they'd mysteriously lost. Except now it was in pieces, meticulously torn into perfect squares. Arranged in a grotesque mosaic inside the box. A cream-colored note card sat on top, Margaret's flowing script spelling out 5 words, "You are not worthy, Jordan." My stomach lurched. The kitchen spun slightly as I gripped the counter, bile rising in my throat. 3 months of work, destroyed. My first real chance at gallery exposure, sabotaged. My phone buzzed. Ryan's face lit up the screen. "Hey, did Mom stop by today?" he asked, his voice cheerful. "She mentioned wanting to drop something off." I stared at the shredded canvas, at the careful destruction of every brushstroke. "No," I said, my voice steady. "Haven't seen her." "You okay?" "You sound weird." "Just focused on a new piece." The lie came easily. Too easily. "How's your day going?" "The usual." "Dinner at 6? Perfect." I ended the call and looked back at the box. Margaret had even included the frame, broken into precise segments. Nothing random about this destruction. This was calculated. Planned. A message. My phone buzzed again, Tessa this time. "Gallery opening tonight," she texted. "You coming?" I picked up one of the torn pieces. It was from the center of the painting, where I'd captured the light hitting the water just right. Margaret had torn directly through it, splitting the reflection in half. "Can't make it," I typed back. Working on something new. Something very new indeed. I grabbed my keys and headed for my studio. Elliot would still be there, probably working on his latest installation. He looked up as I burst through the door, his glasses sliding down his nose. "Show me how to make art that hurts," I said. He set down his brush, studying my face. "What happened?" I dropped the box on his workbench. His eyes widened as he took in the systematic destruction, the notes still sitting pristinely on top of the chaos. "Margaret," he said. Not a question. "She's been sabotaging me." The gallery didn't lose my painting. She took it. Destroyed it. Who knows what else she's done? Elliot picked up one of the pieces, turning it over in his hands. "And Ryan?" "Doesn't know." "Can't know." "Not yet." I ran my fingers through my hair, pacing. She's always hated my art. Hated that Ryan married beneath him. But this is different. "What are you going to do?" I stopped pacing, looking at the scattered remains of my work. "I'm going to enter the Riverside Competition next month. And I'm going to win it." "Jordan." "She wants to destroy my art?" "Fine. I'll make art that destroys her." Elliot was quiet for a long moment. Finally, he nodded toward his supply closet. "There's fresh canvas in there. And that new set of oils you've been eyeing. You're not going to tell me this is a bad idea?" He picked up his brush again, turning back to his work. "Sometimes the best art comes from our darkest places. Just remember, revenge is a color that bleeds." I pulled out a fresh canvas, larger than any I'd worked with before. As I set it on the easel, my hands had stopped shaking. Margaret wanted war? I'd give her war. But I'd do it my way, with brushstrokes instead of bullets, with color instead of carnage. The blank canvas stared back at me, full of possibility and promise. I picked up a brush and began to paint. Sunday dinner at Margaret's house was always an exercise in restraint. I sat at her pristinely set table, watching her serve the roast with mechanical precision, while my shredded painting sat hidden in my studio across town. The weight of her secret pressed against my chest like a stone. "Jordan, dear, I heard about the downtown gallery rejection," Margaret said, passing the potatoes. "Such a shame. Though perhaps it's for the best. The art world can be so cruel to amateurs." Ryan squeezed my knee under the table. "Mom, Jordan's been selling pieces consistently. She's hardly an amateur." "Oh. To whom?" Margaret's smile didn't reach her eyes. "I never seem to hear about these sales." I forced myself to take a bite of roast, buying time. "Actually, I'm entering the Riverside Competition next month." The serving spoon clattered against Margaret's plate. Just for a second, but I caught it. The Riverside? Isn't that rather ambitious? "I think it's great," Ryan said. "Your new work is incredible, honey. The judges would be crazy not to notice." Margaret dabbed her lips with her napkin. "Speaking of crazy, I ran into Charlotte Weber at the club yesterday." "You remember Charlotte, Ryan? Her daughter had that unfortunate episode at art school." My fork froze halfway to my mouth. Charlotte Weber was one of the competition judges. "She mentioned something interesting about emerging artists these days," Margaret continued. "How so many mistake passion for talent. How devastating it can be when reality finally sets in." Ryan frowned. "Mom. Pass the salt, dear?" I handed her the shaker, our fingers brushing. Her hands were ice cold. After dinner, while Ryan helped his mother with dishes, I excused myself to use the bathroom. Instead, I slipped into Margaret's study. The room smelled of leather and old money, everything arranged with surgical precision. But there, behind her desk, hung a familiar piece, one of my earlier works. A small landscape I'd sold through the community center last spring. Lost something? I spun around. Margaret stood in the doorway, wiping her hands on a dish towel. "You bought my painting." "Someone had to." She stepped into the room. "Though I must say, it doesn't quite work in here. The technique is unrefined." "Why are you doing this?" She tilted her head, studying me like a curious insect. "Doing what?" "The gallery submission. The rumors. This." I gestured at the painting. "Why pretend to support me while secretly?" "While secretly what?" Her voice was silk over steel. "Protecting my son from watching his wife's inevitable failure? From seeing her destroy herself chasing childish dreams?" "Ryan believes in me." Ryan has always had a soft heart. Like his father. She moved closer, her perfume suffocating. "But I won't let him waste his life supporting your hobby." My phone buzzed, a text from Tessa, major news about Charlotte Weber. "Call ASAP." "If you'll excuse me," Margaret said, "I should help Ryan finish the dishes." "Feel free to take the painting." As I said, it doesn't quite fit. I waited until their voices resumed in the kitchen before snapping a photo of the painting. Then I called Tessa. "Charlotte Weber resigned from the competition panel yesterday," Tessa said without preamble. "Guess who's taking her place?" My stomach dropped. "Who?" "Margaret Harrison Brooks. Your mother-in-law just became one of your judges." I ended the call and stared at my painting behind Margaret's desk. The longer I looked, the more I noticed something odd about it, subtle marks around the edges, as if someone had tested its durability. Tested how easily it might tear. Ryan's voice drifted from the kitchen, laughing at something his mother said. The sound twisted in my gut like a knife. I thought of my shredded canvas, of Margaret's perfect penmanship spelling out my worthlessness. Of all the other paintings that had mysteriously failed to sell or gotten lost over the years. The Riverside Competition was in 6 weeks. Margaret thought she could break me, destroy my art piece by piece until I gave up. But she'd made one crucial mistake: she'd given me something far more powerful than talent. She'd given me rage. I walked back to the kitchen, where my husband and his mother were finishing the dishes, playing their parts in this perfect family scene. I had 6 weeks to create something extraordinary. Something that would either make my career or destroy it completely. Game on, Margaret. The art gallery's basement storage room smelled of dust and secrets. Tessa's flashlight beam swept across stacked canvases and forgotten sculptures while I followed, my heart hammering against my ribs. "Are you sure about this?" I whispered. "My cousin works inventory here," Tessa said. She noticed something weird in the records. Margaret's name keeps showing up on private purchases. Always your pieces, always through intermediaries. We reached a section marked Private Collections. Tessa consulted her phone, then started counting shelving units. Here. Section M14. The beam illuminated a familiar signature on a canvas edge. My signature. I pulled the piece forward, then another, and another. 6 paintings in total, all mine, all supposedly sold to different collectors over the past year. "Wait," I said, pulling out the last canvas. "This one's different." It wasn't mine. The style was similar but older, dated 1982. The signature read M. Harrison. "Margaret painted?" Tessa asked. I never knew. I studied the piece, a dark, turbulent landscape raw with emotion. Nothing like the perfectly controlled woman I knew. "It's actually good." Footsteps echoed from above. We froze. "Time to go," Tessa whispered. I snapped photos of everything, including Margaret's painting, before we slipped out the emergency exit. The alarm would have triggered, but Tessa's cousin had disabled it for maintenance. Sometimes having friends in low places paid off. The next morning, Ryan was making coffee when I came downstairs. "You were out late," he said. "Working at the studio." The lie tasted bitter. Lost track of time. Mom called. She wants us to come over tonight. Says she has news about the competition. My phone buzzed. "Elliot, need to see you." "Important." "I can't tonight," I said. Deadline for the competition entry. Jordan. Ryan set down his coffee. "What's going on?" "You've been different since that gallery rejection." "Mom's worried." "Your mother's worried?" I pulled up the photos on my phone. "Is that why she's been buying my art through fake collectors? To destroy it like she destroyed my gallery submission?" Ryan's face went slack. "What are you talking about?" I showed him the photos. His hands shook as he swiped through them. "There must be some mistake," he said. "Mom wouldn't. She left me a note with the shredded painting. 'You are not worthy.' Her exact words. Why didn't you tell me?" "Because you never believe anything bad about her. She's been sabotaging me for years, Ryan. And now she's a judge for Riverside." The coffee mug slipped from his hand, shattering on the floor. Neither of us moved to clean it up. "I'll talk to her," he said finally. "There has to be an explanation." My phone buzzed again. "Elliot, Margaret was here. Looking for your competition piece." "Do what you want," I told Ryan. I'm done pretending. I grabbed my keys and headed for the studio. Elliot met me at the door, his face grave. She offered to buy your competition entry, he said. Sight unseen. Substantial amount. Of course she did. I walked to my workspace, where my nearly finished piece stood covered. Did you tell her what it was? No. But Jordan. He hesitated. I found something else. About Margaret. He handed me a yellowed newspaper clipping from 1982. Local artist wins Riverside Competition. The photo showed a younger Margaret standing proudly beside a dark, turbulent landscape. She won Riverside? And never painted again. Married Richard Brooks a month later. Became the perfect society wife. I stared at the article, at Margaret's young face blazing with triumph. Why would she give it up? Maybe she didn't choose to. Elliot touched the edge of my covered canvas. The question is, what are you going to do with this information? I thought about Margaret's hidden painting in the gallery basement, about all my destroyed works, about the competition just weeks away. About Ryan's shattered coffee mug and shattered illusions. I'm going to finish my piece, I said. And I'm going to make her look at it. Really look at it. And then? I pulled the cover off my canvas, revealing the nearly completed work beneath. Then she'll understand exactly what she created when she tried to destroy me. Elliot studied the painting, his eyes widening. My God, Jordan. This isn't art anymore. This is warfare. No, I said, picking up my brush. This is justice. Ryan hadn't come home in 3 days. His texts were brief, distant, staying at Mom's. Need time to think. Meanwhile, my competition piece evolved, darkness bleeding across the canvas like an open wound. The doorbell rang. I opened it to find Margaret standing there, immaculate in cream silk. We need to talk, she said, brushing past me into the house. Her perfume left a toxic trail. Ryan's not here. I know where my son is. She surveyed our living room, gaze lingering on my sketches. I came to make you an offer. I'm not selling my competition piece. No. She opened her handbag, withdrew an envelope. I'm offering you a choice. Inside was a check with more zeros than I'd ever seen, along with plane tickets and rental agreements for an artist's residency in Paris. A year abroad, Margaret said. Time to develop your craft properly. Away from distractions. You mean away from Ryan. You've made your point with this little revenge fantasy. Now it's time to be practical. She touched a preliminary sketch for my competition piece. What do you think will happen when people see this? When they understand what it means? My phone buzzed. Elliot, gallery owner, asking questions about your work. Says Margaret showed him something disturbing. You're trying to discredit me, I said. I'm trying to save you from yourself. Margaret's voice softened. I know what it's like, that burning need to prove yourself through art. To make them all see. Like you did? Before you gave it up? Her fingers tightened on her purse. You've been digging. Why did you stop painting after Riverside? What really happened? Choose carefully, Jordan. She set the envelope on the coffee table. Some victories cost more than we're willing to pay. After she left, I called Tessa. I need you to dig deeper into Margaret's past. Specifically 1982, right after Riverside. Already on it. Found something weird in old society pages. Margaret's marriage announcement came 2 days after her father's company merged with the Brooks family business. My hands shook as I opened my laptop, pulling up the photos from the gallery basement. Margaret's painting stared back at me, its turbulent darkness a mirror of my own work. Her parents arranged the marriage, I said. They used her art career as leverage. There's more. That painting that won Riverside? It disappeared right after the competition. Nobody's seen it since. I studied the hidden painting I'd photographed. The style, the date. Because she painted another version. A darker one. The one she kept secret. Footsteps on the porch. Ryan walked in, looking exhausted. Mom told me about the offer, he said. Of course she did. Maybe it's not a bad idea. A fresh start, away from all this. You mean away from the truth? I turned my laptop, showing him the article about his grandparents' merger. Your mother won Riverside, and her parents used it to broker her marriage to your father. They buried her art career along with her dreams. That doesn't excuse what you're planning. He ran his fingers through his hair. I saw your sketches, Jordan. This isn't art anymore. It's destruction. Like what she did to my work. Two wrongs don't make. Don't. I stood up. Don't you dare defend her after everything she's done. I'm not defending anyone. I'm trying to stop this before it ruins everything. He grabbed the envelope Margaret left. Please. Take the offer. We can start over. I looked at my husband, this man I loved, caught between two immovable forces. Then at Margaret's hidden painting, its darkness a testament to buried dreams and silent rage. I can't, I said. Then I don't know how to help you. He left the envelope and walked out. Through the window, I watched him drive away, wondering if he was heading back to his mother's house. Back to her perfectly constructed world of control and manipulation. I picked up my phone and called Elliot. I need to change the piece, I said. Make it bigger. More complex. Jordan. I know what Margaret's painting meant now. What she was really trying to say. I stared at my canvas. And I know exactly how to make her hear her own message echoed back. 3 days before the Riverside competition, I hadn't slept in 36 hours. My studio walls disappeared behind sketches and reference photos, Margaret's hidden painting, my shredded canvas, newspaper clippings from 1982. In the center stood my competition piece, almost complete, its surface a maze of subtle accusations and buried truths. The door creaked open. Ryan stood there, looking lost in the chaos of my workspace. You missed dinner, he said. Again. I'm working. He stepped closer to the canvas, squinting. Is that Mom's old painting? Part of it. I wiped paint-stained hands on my jeans. Along with everything else she tried to bury. Jesus, Jordan. He traced the air above a particularly dark section. This will destroy her. Like she destroyed me? She's still my mother. And I'm still your wife. My voice cracked. Or am I? You haven't been home in weeks. Before he could answer, my phone buzzed. Tessa, emergency. Margaret's making moves. Get to the gallery now. I have to go, I said, grabbing my keys. It's midnight. Then I guess Margaret picked the perfect time. I found Tessa outside the gallery, pacing. She's inside with the board members. Emergency meeting about concerns regarding your competition entry. Through the window, I could see Margaret holding court, her perfect posture radiating authority. The gallery director nodded gravely at whatever she was saying. She's trying to get me disqualified, I said. Not just that. Tessa grabbed my arm. Look who else is there. In the corner stood Elliot, clutching a portfolio. No, I whispered. He wouldn't. But as I watched, he handed the portfolio to Margaret. She withdrew something, preliminary sketches for my competition piece. Sketches I'd trusted him with. Your mentor's switching sides, Tessa said. My legs went weak. She got to him. Somehow she. The gallery door opened. Elliot stepped out, saw me, and froze. I'm sorry, he said. She found out about Paris. What about Paris? The residency I did there in '82. With her father's funding. He wouldn't meet my eyes. The same deal she offered you. Understanding hit like a physical blow. You were part of it. Back then. You helped them control her. I was young. Ambitious. Her father offered. Get out of my sight. He hesitated, then walked away into the darkness. Through the window, Margaret was still talking, her hands moving in elegant gestures as she systematically dismantled my reputation. What are you going to do? Tessa asked. I pulled out my phone and called Ryan. I need you to choose, I said when he answered. Right now. Tonight. Jordan. Your mother is at the gallery with the board. She's using Elliot to try to destroy my career. Again. Just like she destroyed her own. Silence stretched between us. If you don't stand with me on this, I said, we're done. No Paris. No fresh start. Just done. More silence. Then, I'll be there in 10 minutes. I ended the call and turned to Tessa. I need you to get something from my studio. The photos from Margaret's hidden painting. All of them. What are you going to do? I watched Margaret through the window, remembering her perfect penmanship on that note, you are not worthy. I'm going to show her exactly what happens when you bury an artist's truth. Ryan's car pulled up as Tessa left. He looked at the gallery, at Margaret holding court inside, then at me. Together? He asked. I took his hand. Together. We walked into the gallery, interrupting Margaret mid-sentence. The room fell silent. Jordan, Margaret said smoothly. We were just discussing some concerns about. About what? I stepped forward. About how history repeats itself? About how some people never stop destroying art they can't control? Her perfect mask slipped, just for a moment. In that crack, I saw everything, the fear, the rage, the buried dreams of 1982. The competition is in 3 days, I said. Your move, Margaret. The game was entering its final phase. And this time, I wasn't the only one with something to lose. The Riverside Competition gallery hummed with whispers and champagne glasses. My piece stood covered in the center of the room, surrounded by the other finalists' work. In 10 minutes, the judges would make their final walkthrough. Margaret glided through the crowd like a shark through water, perfect in midnight blue silk. She paused to chat with each judge, her smile razor-sharp. Ready? Ryan squeezed my hand. Before I could answer, Tessa rushed over. Problem. Big problem. She thrust her phone at me. On the screen was a social media post, photos of my studio walls, covered in my research about Margaret. The caption read, Obsession or Art? Judge Margaret Harrison Brooks targeted by disturbed competitor. How? Elliot, Tessa said. Had to be. He had access to your studio. The room suddenly felt too small. Across the gallery, Margaret caught my eye and smiled. Ladies and gentlemen, the gallery director announced. The judges will now begin their final review. Margaret approached my covered piece, the other judges trailing behind her. Shall we? I stepped forward to remove the cover, but she held up her hand. First, she said, her voice carrying across the now silent room. I feel ethically obligated to disclose something. She withdrew a familiar envelope from her clutch. The artist attempted to bribe her way into this competition. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Ryan started forward, but I grabbed his arm. This check, Margaret continued, was refused, of course. But combined with evidence of disturbing obsessive behavior. She gestured at the social media post now circulating on dozens of phones. That's not what happened, I said, but my voice sounded weak even to me. Perhaps we should disqualify, one judge began. No. Margaret's smile widened. Let's see what kind of work spawns from such instability. She yanked the cover off my piece. Silence fell like a blade. The painting was massive, a triptych of interwoven scenes. At first glance, it showed a series of abstract forms, dark and turbulent. But as viewers looked closer, patterns emerged. A young woman's dreams being buried alive. A mother destroying her daughter-in-law's art. And there, hidden in plain sight, Margaret's own lost painting from 1982, recreated and transformed. This is... Margaret's voice faltered for the first time. This is slander. This is truth, I said. Your truth. The one you buried decades ago. She turned to the judges. This person is clearly unstable. These accusations are documented. Ryan stepped forward, holding up a file. Every piece of art my mother secretly bought and destroyed. Every rumor she spread. And this. He pulled out the original note, "You are not worthy." Margaret's perfect mask cracked. Ryan, please. Enough, Mom. But Margaret wasn't finished. She turned to the crowd, her voice breaking perfectly. My own son, turned against me by this. This manipulation. First she stalks me, then she corrupts my family. Actually, a new voice said, she didn't stalk anyone. Elliot stood in the doorway, looking haggard. I gave her the information. About 1982. About your father's deal with me. He met my eyes. I'm done being part of this cycle. Margaret's composure shattered. She spun toward my painting, fingers curled like claws. You think you understand? You think this gives you the right? She lunged for the canvas. I didn't move to stop her. Neither did Ryan. We watched as her fingers froze inches from the surface, trembling. As she finally saw what I'd hidden in the layers of paint, her own words from 1982, excerpts from her artist's statement when she won Riverside. Art is truth. And truth, once buried, grows teeth. Margaret stumbled back, her perfect facade crumbling completely. The judges need to confer, the gallery director said quietly. As they led Margaret away, still shaking, Ryan turned to me. What happens now? I stared at my painting, at the darkness and light woven through its surface. At the buried truths finally exposed. Now, I said, we wait to see what kind of teeth truth really has. The judges disappeared into their private room, leaving me alone with my art and the weight of all our combined betrayals. In 10 minutes, they would return with their decision. And nothing, not my marriage, not my career, not this family, would ever be the same. The judges returned after 20 minutes that felt like years. The gallery director stepped forward, clearing his throat. But before he could speak, Margaret surged up from her seat. I withdraw from the judging panel, she announced. Her voice carried the practiced authority of someone used to controlling rooms. And I moved to disqualify this entry on grounds of personal harassment. The other judges exchanged glances. The gallery director coughed. Margaret, we've already reached our decision. Then I'll sue. She turned to face the crowd. This piece is a deliberate attack, designed to. To what? I stepped forward. Tell the truth? You know nothing about truth. Her perfect mask had cracked, revealing something raw beneath. You're a mediocre artist playing at revenge. Like you played at being an artist? I gestured at my triptych. Before you let them bury your dreams? She moved faster than I expected, closing the distance between us. You think you're different? Special? I had real talent. Real vision. But talent isn't enough in this world. No, I said. Fear isn't enough either. The gallery director tried to intervene, but Margaret waved him off. She was trembling now, her carefully constructed world crumbling around her. First place, he announced anyway, his voice cutting through the tension. The judges award first place to Jordan Harrison. The room erupted in applause, but Margaret wasn't finished. She reached into her clutch and pulled out a lighter. Mom, don't, Ryan started forward. One flick, she said, and your masterpiece burns. Just like all the others. The room froze. Security moved toward us, but too slowly. You won't, I said quietly. No? Her laugh was brittle. I've destroyed your work before. But not in public. Not where everyone can see who you really are. Her hand shook. The lighter flickered. You know what I see in this painting? I stepped closer. I see you. The real you. The artist who won Riverside 40 years ago. The one who painted truth before they buried it. Stop. I found your original piece, Margaret. The dark one. The one you hid. It was brilliant. Savage. Honest. I pointed to a section of my triptych. That's why I put it here. To show everyone what they stole from you. The lighter clattered to the floor. Margaret stared at the section I'd indicated, her own work reimagined and reborn within mine. Her eyes widened as she finally saw what I'd done, not just exposed her cruelty, but excavated her lost genius. I could have been. She whispered. Yes. You could have. She crumpled then, decades of perfect posture dissolving. Ryan caught her before she hit the floor. The crowd pressed closer, phones recording everything, but I barely noticed them. I watched Margaret sob in her son's arms, all her careful walls finally shattered. The piece isn't about revenge, I said softly. It's about what happens when we bury truth. How it grows teeth and claws its way back up. Tessa appeared at my side, holding an envelope. Found this in the gallery archives. From 1982. Inside was a letter in Margaret's youthful hand, declining her acceptance to a prestigious art fellowship. The reason cited, family obligations. Congratulations, Elliot said from behind me. You won. But looking at Margaret's broken form, at Ryan's torn expression as he held his mother. At the crowd's hungry phones documenting every moment of her destruction, victory felt hollow. The gallery director was saying something about press opportunities and upcoming exhibitions. Critics were clustering around my triptych, dissecting its layers of meaning. Someone pressed a glass of champagne into my hand. But all I could see was Margaret, slowly rebuilding her composure, straightening her spine through sheer will. Our eyes met across the room. In that moment, I recognized something terrible. We were mirror images, each of us willing to destroy the other in the name of art. What now? Ryan asked, looking between us. I stared at my winning piece, at the truths and lies woven through its surface. At the price of victory. Now, I said, we learn to live with what we've made. The movers carried the last pieces of Margaret's art collection down her curved driveway. She stood in her doorway, watching them load her carefully curated life into trucks. Her social circle had evaporated after the competition, leaving her mansion feeling like a museum after hours, pristine and empty. I hadn't planned to come here. But the package I'd received that morning changed everything. Here to gloat? Margaret asked as I approached. Her voice lacked its usual edge. You sent me this. I held up the leather portfolio I'd found on my doorstep. Inside were dozens of sketches, her early work raw and powerful, dating back to before she won Riverside. "I'm selling the house," she said instead of answering. "Moving to the coast. There's a small artist colony there." "Starting over?" "Starting again." She turned to face me fully. "There's a difference." The movers called out questions about the remaining artwork. Margaret excused herself to handle it, leaving me alone in her foyer. Family photos lined the walls, Margaret and Ryan through the years, their smiles growing more practiced with time. But there, half hidden behind a larger frame, was a small photograph I'd never seen, Margaret in her studio, pregnant with Ryan. Surrounded by canvases. "I was 7 months along," she said, returning. "Still painting, despite my parents' disapproval. They said it wasn't proper for their daughter-in-law to pursue such common aspirations. So you buried it." "I thought I was protecting Ryan. Giving him the life I was supposed to want." She touched the photograph. "Instead, I became what I hated." "Why show me these now?" I gestured at the portfolio. "Because you were right. Truth does grow teeth." She withdrew an envelope from her jacket. "This came yesterday. The Riverside Competition wants me to judge again next year. Are you going to accept?" "No." A ghost of her old smile appeared. "I'm going to enter." The implications hung between us, competitor, not controller. Artist, not aristocrat. "Ryan's waiting in the car," I said. "He wanted to help with the moving. But you came in first." "I needed to see." "What?" "If I was truly destroyed? If you were finally free." She flinched. In that moment, I saw what my revenge had really accomplished, not destruction, but excavation. Beneath the rubble of her perfect facade lay an artist's soul, gasping for air after 40 years of burial. "I won't apologize," she said. "I know. And I won't ask for forgiveness." "Good." I set her portfolio on the hall table. "Because some things don't deserve forgiveness. They deserve understanding." I turned to leave, but her voice stopped me. "The piece you're working on now," she said. "The one about buried truths rising. It's better than your competition entry." "How did you?" "I still have friends at the gallery." She straightened her spine, muscle memory of perfect posture. "You've moved beyond revenge. Found something deeper." Through the window, I saw Ryan leaning against our car, watching the movers work. Waiting to help his mother pack up her old life, even after everything. "Truth isn't enough," I said. "Neither is talent." "No." Margaret picked up her portfolio. "But freedom might be." I left her there, surrounded by empty walls and packed boxes. In the car, Ryan squeezed my hand. "Okay?" he asked. I watched Margaret in the rearview mirror as we drove away. She stood in her doorway, portfolio clutched to her chest. Looking less like the woman who'd tried to destroy me and more like the artist in that old photograph, full of dangerous possibilities. "She'll never be part of our lives again," I said. "I know. But she might make something beautiful out of her ruins." Ryan nodded, understanding the weight of what wasn't being forgiven, but was being released. At home, my latest canvas waited in the studio, its surface a maze of rising truths and buried dreams. I added one final detail, a small, dark bird, wings spread wide, emerging from the depths. Some wounds never heal. But sometimes, if we're brave enough, they become windows instead of walls.